at Row Crop U in Omaha, Nebraska with John McGillicuddy. John, could you please tell us a little bit about what you spoke about today?
Mostly just trying to allocate resources within your corn and soybean production. You only have so many resources, water, sunshine, and minerals, and when we start pushing population, sometimes we're allocating too many of those resources to things that we don't get to sell. So we're trying to balance a whole lot of issues with population versus nutrient availability versus final crop production to see if we can't make it come out a little better at the end.
Okay, you talked about the tests and trials you've done on the different numbers of population. Can you tell us a little bit about those, both in corn and soybeans?
Well, we ask our farm clients to test a lot of things for us, and they're very willing to do that. So we get to look at a lot of things in a lot more locations, excuse me, with a very limited budget. And so what we asked them to do this year was to start reducing corn populations and reducing soybean populations. And unfortunately, we never really went low enough to trigger a significant yield loss, and without that, we don't really know how low we should have gone. Some of our very highest yields were at our very lowest seeding rates. Now you have to qualify that. Soil types make a difference. Corn, we go heavier seeding rates on better soils, and soybeans, we kind of go the opposite. We go to heavier seeding rates on poorer soils. You also have to be able to space them accurately. You have to get a reasonably early planting date, those kinds of things. I'm not advocating high population, I'm not advocating low population, I'm advocating which one generates the most revenue. And you kind of have to figure that out on your own. You have to do a lot of trial and error.
Okay, you talked a little bit about kernel weight and how that affects the yield. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Crop yields are pretty simple equations. Number of kernels of corn you produce on an acre times what they weigh. And when you're trying to increase your yield, you have to increase one of those numbers. You either increase kernel number or you can increase kernel weight. It's hard to do both. And so when we push high populations, and for years we did that, and we were mostly chasing an increase in yield by increasing the number of kernels per acre. The last few years, the data is telling us that kernel weight's a more critical factor in today's really high yields. We're getting kernel weights as low as maybe 55, 56,000 kernels in a 56-pound bushel, which is lower than we've seen in the past. When I started, 90,000 was considered average, and now 90,000 is almost always attached to a low yield or some kind of failure. And so when you're making your agronomic decisions, you kind of got to look at which one you're going to chase. It's hard to chase both kernel number and kernel weight in the same field. They're usually kind of contradictory.
What technologies are you seeing more farmers using to help them with their increasing in yields?
Mostly GIS technology to measure results. It's very easy now with the modern planters to change populations on the go. And so while you're going across the field, you punch it up 10%, and then you come back and punch it down 10%, and you just measure which one, on your yield data, you measure which one paid most often. So we're just trying to figure out the decisions we make, how do we verify that they're producing revenue, because corn prices, soybean prices today, we do not have extra money to invest in extra things. We have to be ultra careful about putting things where we're getting a return. And the only way to do that is to take those measurements on your own farm.